Peace, peace. You know what it is. It's your man SKYZOO Skyzoo, live out the borough. And this is the NBA Exchange with my man Dexter Henry. You know how you doing it, man. Log on, tap in. Let's get into it.
What's good, everybody? Welcome to the NBA Exchange. Your host, Dexter Henry here. Got a good show for you today. We're going to talk a little bit of Sixers basketball, look around the league. Joining me to talk about that, good friend of mine, DeAntae Prince. He is Senior NBA Editor for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Second time on the show, first time doing this live. DeAntae, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, man?
Good, man. Always good to see you. I know we're probably not feeling maybe as happy as some of the Sixer fans from seeing how James Harden is playing. He's been balling, man. I've been impressed with what we've seen from him in the first two games. Now, Nets fans, they're probably not so happy. They're like, where was this? We haven't seen this all season. Have you been as impressed as I have been with how he's looked in his first two games? Triple-double yesterday here in New York against the Knicks. How impressed would you been with James Harden thus far?
Yeah, I've been impressed, but I think this is kind of who he is, right? Even in Brooklyn, he was, there was some issues with people worried about his scoring averages and stuff like that, but he was still averaging 22 points a game. While I don't know if the effort was fully there, but the numbers still were, even in that situation, despite, with the exception of some of those games at the end. But with the 76ers, like, this was a ready-made team. They don't necessarily have the issues that Brooklyn had with KD being injured and Kyrie only being able to play in a couple games. Like, they have Joel Embiid, who's, going through an MVP level season. Tobias Harris hasn't played well yet with James, but he picked up his play this year and was doing pretty well. And Tyrese Maxey is a rising star in the league. Matisse Thybulle was one of the best defenders in the league. So he has a lot to work with there. The impressive part is that the passing has translated, even though he doesn't know the offense yet. He was honest with reporters. Gina Mizell and Keith Pompey, who cover the Sixers, they reported that, he said he's still winging it a little bit out there, but you wouldn't know it from, just watching how smoothly he's doing the pick and roll with Joel Embiid, or how he's finding Matisse Thybulle on cuts, finding Maxey open for shots on the 3-point line. So he's really tried to ingratiate himself with the team, and he's fitting nicely on the court so far. So definitely been impressive, but this is kind of par for the course.
Yeah, this part of the course, we know what he is. I think a lot of the question has been, okay, when he comes in, they gave up some pieces for him. Does this make them a better team than what they were before? The guys were playing around Embiid before, the role players, but now he comes in. Do you think they're already immediately a better team than what we've seen for them, through the first half of the season?
I think they have to be, yeah. I mean, when you add a guy who can get a triple-double every night, and you were down a man, you were without one of the better defenders and one of your other all-stars, and now you replace that spot where you were essentially getting zero with 25, 10, and 10 every night. I mean, you can't help but be better, right? I think even the energy around the team is a little bit different. Like, people just seem a little bit more upbeat. You can notice that with Joel. Tyrese is always like that, but even he's been a little bit, more excited and excitable with James in this situation. So, I think they instantly become a little bit better. He obviously has some playoff experience, hasn't made it past the Western Conference Finals or the conference finals in general in his career. But, the East is kind of, it's a little open, with Brooklyn's situation. Obviously the Bucks are good and solid and still have their team together. But I think, even the Bulls, who've been atop the East all year, they really haven't performed well against winning teams. And I saw the record. They, these Sixers included, they're 0-3 against them this year. So the East is there for the taking if they can keep it together the way they have. This is a very, very early version of the team that we're seeing so far, though.
Yeah, very, very early. Still got a little bit to go, a little bit over 22, 23 games for most teams. When you looked at everything that went around the trade, and I had Keith on the show earlier in the season where it was like something had to give, right, in terms of Ben Simmons. You talked about how the energy is shifted around the team, DeAntae, but a lot of people, I talked to some friends in Philly, and they were like, oh, we don't want to give up Maxey. We didn't want to give up, any of the young core pieces we have.
Yeah.
What did you think of the trade? And obviously, Harden's a great piece for them, but did you think they gave up too much? Did Morey give up too much for Harden here? Or was this just going to be the cost of business as we saw?
Yeah, I think it was the cost of business. They were going to lose some depth on the bench regardless in the situation. Like, best case scenario, they lose some depth off the bench. Worst case, they lose Maxey or Thibault and, players that they can develop for the next 10 years. And I think Morey made the right play in making sure that he didn't sacrifice those guys in this trade. I'm sure there were a lot of teams along the line, and it kind of seemed like he was maybe asking for too much at certain times and not necessarily wasn't necessarily willing to give much back because he refused to give up to those guys. But in the end, he stuck to his guns. He got the guy that he wanted the entire time, the guy that they tried to get a year ago in James Harden, guy he was with in Houston for years, and they had a successful run together. So I think the trade actually worked out well for everybody when assuming Ben gets on the court, because his skill set should match well with those other guys, being a plus defender when Kyrie and KD can D up sometimes, but Kyrie isn't necessarily a plus defender, so they'll need somebody to guard the best team or the best player on the other team, and a guy who can get out on the break with them and run and create. So. And he's not asking for shots in the same way that James probably would. So
right, I do think to some degree there's a way looking at this both sides won here for sure. Like I definitely think there's a way both sides have won this trade. You brought up Simmons, so I got to ask. March 10th. We all got that date circled on our calendar. Ben Simmons could return to Philadelphia, but we've heard about some setbacks he might be having with the back. Brooklyn. One, do you think that happens? And two, how the Philly fans going to treat him when he comes back in Philly?
I can answer the first one first because we kind of both know exactly how that's going to go, right? Yeah, he's definitely going to get booed. Somebody might do something crazy, knock on wood. Nobody does anything crazy and tries to get on the court or anything like that. But you can't necessarily put that past Philly, right? So we know what the reception will be for sure after, he essentially forced his way out of town and sat out for, at this point, it's been more than half the season, and with this back situation, he could end up, being out from, who knows how long, right? And I guess because of that situation with the injury and needing to get conditioning right, as Steve Nash said, I don't know that we end up getting exactly what we want out of that matchup. It seems a little soon. March 1 is literally tomorrow, right? So he would have essentially 10 days to get acclimated with the team, be in the lineup, actually play, all of that. So, yeah, I don't know how much I expect that. And I think that if the Nets are going to pinpoint a time to put him in the lineup over the next couple weeks, I know Ben said that he would like to play in that game. But I think if you just traded for a guy who potentially had, some mental scars and, some issues with that city in particular, I don't think you throw him to the Wolves in his first or second or third game. So I can see the Nets wanting that not to be the case.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Either way, it's going to be interesting. I don't know about you, DeAntae, but I'm hoping we can see a Sixers Nets playoff series. I feel like that would be a lot of fun for NBA fans. Joel Embiid, he's played well all year. You talk in some circles, people are saying he's a front runner for the MVP. Where do you see him right now in that, and how focused do you see him in terms of, we know he wants that award. He's talked about wanting it before. How focused is Embiid right now in terms of trying to get that award?
Yeah, he definitely wants it. We all went out to All-Star in Cleveland, and I think he's maybe rallied for it in years past, and now he just wants his play to kind of do the talking, as he told Keith and Gina out in Cleveland. But I mean, his play has done the talking thus far. He's carried a team that, before they actually got Harden, I mean, I don't think people would say that was one of the, structure-wise, one of the best teams in the league. Yet he had them, really competing in the East in that, 6-3 range night to night, even though, those numbers kind of jumble up. But he had them in the pack, and a lot of that was 30 and 10 every night, 40 over here, 40 over here. And, when he came out to the Midwest, he did that against Chicago and Milwaukee. So I think he has a strong case. He's done everything he can at this point. If he continues to play this way, I don't see why he couldn't bring it home.
Yeah, I don't see why either. He's been fantastic, and his game you could think only can improve with Harden there. You talked about this a bit before, DeAntae, about how good the Sixers team could be now that they have Harden. What do you think the ceiling is for them? Should Sixers fans be thinking, hey, we can make it to the finals? Is it Eastern Conference Finals? Is it finals or bust with this squad? What do you see as the ceiling for this new look Sixers squad?
I wouldn't exactly say finals or bust. I don't think people in Philly would either. I think this is a team that hasn't, at least with, as currently constructed with Joel Embiid, they haven't made it out of the second round. So I think the goal should be to start there and make it to the conference finals, get a taste of that, get your young guys into, some tough situations. We saw Tyrese Maxey really respond in the playoffs last year. So, now you'll have that guy in a bigger role. Obviously, James and Joel won't be afraid of the moment. And, we talked about the East situation. I think it's open for them if things roll well. It's open for them to make the conference finals or potentially go to the finals. You would obviously have to go through a tough Milwaukee team in order to do that. I think the West is tough. Phoenix is tough. It's a little bit different over there, I think, right now than it is in the East. The East was supposed to have the powers with, KD and all those guys coming out there, and it didn't necessarily play out that way. But yeah, I mean, they could potentially get there. Finals or bust would be a little bit too much at this point, I think.
Yeah, I think that might be a bit much there. But yeah, like I said, the talent, you never know how anything breaks, especially in the East, has been really competitive. They just, I know Keith had reported last week about them adding Willie Cauley-Stein, signing him. You talked about how they lost some depth. Do you see them doing anything else in the buyout market, or are there any other pieces you think the Sixers need to add to make a deep playoff run?
It seems like they're going to kind of roll with what they have. I think we were thinking, especially because Shake Milton has been hurt a lot. Drummond was really good for them in the short time that he got there. And the Sixers have been one of the worst rebounding teams in the league throughout the season. So we, just on our side, the thought was that they would need somebody to play backup center, help with rebounding, and potentially need a backup point guard off the buyout market too. Doc's previously said that they would be looking and trying to add people. Cauley-Stein is only on a 10 days, so they could potentially try out somebody else in that spot, depending on what they get from him. And I don't know. With the guard situation, Shake has been playing now too. Tyrese and James look so good. It might be a little bit different now that they have James on the court for the point guard situation. But right now they're trying out Paul Millsap in that backup center spot. I think that's the area that maybe they try to add somebody else in, especially because you want to be able to give Embiid enough time to rest and give him a spell before the playoffs, as well as in game, and not run him ragged. So that could be the most important spot.
Backup center, something for them to look at. I want to look around the NBA with you because we touched on the Sixers, but we're coming down the home stretch now. 22, 23, some teams 21 games left. Yeah. What are some teams you're looking at where you're like, look, they need to close this season strong? Is it the Sixers because they've had a new addition? Is it some other teams that you're looking at? They really need to close this season strongly before they head into the playoffs.
I think the Sixers are one. I think the Warriors probably fall in that line too, where they looked really good for a really long time. Steph has looked really good this season. he had the early MVP buzz. And they've lost some big leads recently, including I think last night as well. So they're one of those teams. The Suns have been good all year. So for a team like that, you just keep doing what you're doing, right? But I guess the most important one is probably Brooklyn, right? Figuring out what they want to do with the rest of the year. You need to get KD healthy. You need to figure out if Kyrie is going to be able to play home and away. You need to figure out if Ben is even going to be able to play or what his situation is going to be. So I think that's probably the team that needs to figure out the most in the next 23, 24 games and going into the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, all eyes are going to be in Brooklyn, see how they do it. I got to ask about your hometown Chicago Bulls. They've been up at the top of the Eastern Conference. How good do you think they can be in the playoffs? Are they dangerous? Are they a team you can watch out? Everybody's still going to talk about Milwaukee. Sixers going to get some talk. Brooklyn, if they get their act together as well, too. But how good do you think the Bulls could be in the postseason?
Yeah, I think the Bulls actually fall in line with that group we were just talking about, right? Like they've had some injury issues lately with, Levine and, Zoe was out for a really long time. So we have, I don't know if anything new has come out on him, but to my knowledge, he still hasn't returned to the team. And Caruso got hurt on that really tough injury with, fracturing his wrist. So that's another team that really has to figure out what they're doing. And I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but, they've struggled a little bit against some of the better teams in the league. And I think some of that has to do with their injury history, and some of that has to do with, kind of leaning on DeMar a lot to be the closer and the guy who goes and gets 30 every night. So, the onus is really on them to kind of figure out what they're doing going into the playoffs. But I'd say if I had to ballpark it, second round ish.
That's still a good season for them, though, right? Right.
I think it is. That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, this is a team that had much lower expectations coming into the year. Nobody really knew that DeMar was going to break out like this and, basically become the old Toronto version, if not better, of himself. So obviously you would have liked to have Zach and Zoe a little bit healthier. Like when they were all together, that team was going, and I probably would have said conference finals as a bottom out for them when they were playing their best, but that's not necessarily where they are right now.
Yeah, I think even like you said, even if it's second round from where the Bulls were, haven't made the playoffs in a while, this is nothing to
I think people should be happy about that. Yeah.
Yeah, you would think so. You think they got to be happy about that. When you look at the league, you talked about how tough the East is, DeAntae. We talked about the teams at the top of the West, Warriors. Talked about the Suns as well too. The Grizzlies have played very well and impressively. Who do you think wins this NBA title this year? If you had to look at it right now, who's gonna take home the crown?
I like the Suns' chances, honestly. I think they had a really good shot last year, and Chris Paul keeps being in basically a injury away from winning a title. Obviously, the Heat are really solid, but I don't know. Something about the East just feels a little off to me, and I feel like the Suns have kind of been the best team rolling it into this, and for really from start to finish, they've been the best team in the league this year. So if I had to pick one team, maybe I pick the Suns. If I had to pick multiple, maybe go Suns, Warriors, Sixers, Heat. That would be maybe my top four.
That's a good group, and I feel like the Heat are sometimes probably getting left out the conversation. They've been really good. I have some concerns with their offense down the stretch of games, but they've been really solid. Do you see it as being pretty? It sounds to me what you're saying is it's pretty wide open this year. You're not really the Suns have played the best ball, but you're not really just going to automatically crown them as locks to go win it or favorites to go win. It's pretty wide open, right?
Yeah, it feels that way, right? Like everybody kind of has a chance right now. I don't think anyone is, with the exception of the Suns, really just like standing apart from the pack at this point. The Warriors have had some good spells. The Grizzlies have had some good spells, but Memphis is so young. Jokic is carrying an entire team. Like kind of by himself in the same way that Embiid was before the trade. So, yeah, this feels like one of the more open years in recent memory, especially because we don't have that LeBron situation where he's actually really contending this time around. So
Right.
usually it would be good to if you're gonna pick somebody, you pick LeBron, you pick Steph, and then you figure out the rest of the field. But it feels a little bit different this year.
So, DeAntae, you are not betting on the Lakers to make some magical run through the postseason. Sounds like that.
Nah, I think they have some things to figure out in the offseason. Yeah, I think for them it's not even about the playoffs. It's about figuring out why this past summer took such a toll on their roster. What guys they might need to come in to fill those spots that they used to have with a guy like KCP, Kuzma. Like, it kind of seems like they should have kept those guys because they played roles next to LeBron. They knew what their job was at that point. You know what I mean? And for whatever reason, the Lakers felt like they needed to blow this team up and make a bunch of changes. I mean, some of it might have been financial. I'm sure that was the case with Schroeder, obviously, but yeah, they got some things to figure out because LeBron is still great, man. He's still playing really good basketball.
Yeah, he's still balling, man. Still balling.
AD can't stay healthy. So yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, I'm not banking on some late season Lakers run.
Nice.
I don't see that. I don't see that happening, man. I don't see that happening. That's DeAntae Prince, my guy who is the editor, NBA editor for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Does such a great job. DeAntae, man, always appreciate you joining me here. We got to have you back before the postseason to talk about some more stuff. And look, I'll say the Sixers look good, man. I think they look really good. I think Sixer fans should be encouraged, and I think you and Keith and the rest of the team that does a great job at the Philadelphia Inquirer, you guys are going to have some fun stuff to cover this postseason. I don't know if we can say the same. We can't say the same in New York.
Yep, we got a lot going on. Harden debut in Philly coming on Wednesday, so that's just one line of a lot of things that have been going on in Philly for sure.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of stuff going on. I think people will be excited about that. Sure. So thanks everybody for rocking with us on today's episode. A short one, a little bit later of the NBA Exchange. I'm Dexter Henry. Continue to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Also the same thing on all the digital streaming platforms. We'll be back on Wednesday with my man Gerard Hector. A lot to talk about. And check out DeAntae's work. Go give him a follow on Twitter and everywhere he's at. DeAntae, thank you again, man. Until next time, y'all, on the NBA Exchange. Be safe. Peace.